seen and presentations done by Emer and Spence in an excellent way, and I introduced already the 4 breakout sessions and the rapporteur teams or rapporteurs of the 4 breakout sessions. And I think these are important topics we have to discuss. So you can now work in your breakout sessions, and please enter the room as now you have been agreed to, and then we will come back with the reports of the rapporteurs then after these breakout sessions, and have then time to wrap up from the 4 breakout groups, and then 30 minutes for deeper discussion or questions which might be raised. So thank you very much. So, and a lot of success in your breakouts.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Elizabeth, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. So I see we have 11 participants. We're gonna wait a little bit more to see if we have more people coming in. While we're waiting for the people to join now.
Are you listening to some noise? Because from here we are listening to some noise.
There's some background noise.
Yes,
I will liaise with them.
Can you try to mute the phones, please, just to check where the sound is? Okay, it's better now. We don't hear any sound anymore. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, can you speak to see if I can listen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
The noise is the same.
Well, there's still a background noise. Seems to be okay now. So I think we can maybe start. Would that be okay? We're going to kickstart. I can't see you. So if anyone wants to intervene during the discussion, you can put a note in the chat, and you can also, I think, raise your hand here somewhere. Just leave a note in the chat for me to be able to see you, and you can raise your hand in the list of participants that you have, and I can monitor that and give you the floor when we'll be discussing. But I will just start with a very short introduction for this session. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Elizabeth Keslingham. I'm the acting executive director of the European Patients Forum, and the European Patients Forum is an independent non-profit umbrella organizations of patients organizations across Europe and across disease areas. So our members include different specific patient groups that are active at either European level or national level through national coalitions of patients. And we work towards a vision, a common vision, that is a Europe where the patients' organizations are valued partners in creating equitable, person-centered, accessible and sustainable healthcare systems. And we are working on the mission to advance the interest of the patients and their patient communities by strengthening their collective voice and the impact that they have across Europe through with effective advocacy, education, empowerment, and partnership. In this specific session today, we would like to focus the discussion on the unmet medical needs, and in particular on the medicines and medical device research in view of patients and health system needs. So it's concretely how to meet concrete needs of the patients and the health system that would help to make progress in improving the care that the patients are receiving. For EPF, this topic has been very important in the last year, and we recently published a position paper on this, on value of and pricing of the innovative medicines. And in line with this position statement, we would like to have this discussion with you today. Just a few key statement to think about and maybe to reflect upon during this workshop, and I would like to hear your perspective on this. So basically, we're here, we as EPF, we believe that ensuring access to affordable medicines for patients and addressing the unmet medical needs is a key priority of the new EU pharma strategy. Therefore, reaching a common understanding, either through criteria or a definition on the notion of unmet needs is fundamental. So first of all, establish an understanding of what we are talking about. This has been highlighted in the Commission's roadmap, and so we think that it would be really important to find a way to define better this notion. Then there is another question that comes up, is patient's perspective versus the general public consultation. While a broad public... can I ask those people who don't have their mic muted to mute themselves, please? We have some background noise, so if you could mute yourself when you're not speaking, that would be really helpful. So I was saying, in terms of the patient perspective, we believe that it is indispensable to bring the patient's perspective in the consultation, to be able to identify what are the unmet needs and of the individual patients, also for particular diseases. Many studies have shown that the patient's preferences and priorities are different from the priorities as defined by healthcare professionals or by the general public. So for this reason, it is really important to bring the patient's perspective at an early stage when we are defining the problems, the gaps, what are the needs and the priorities, and also when we are discussing new strategies to improve access to high quality and safe treatments. As it is still not the case, we believe that it's important to help meaningful patient involvement at an early stage in the process in terms of research and development. And we also believe that one of the main benefits of bringing the patient's perspective in shaping research and meeting the needs in the medical and in terms of medicines, it will ultimately help to broaden the social impact, not only on the healthcare system financially, but it will have a broader social impact to help the people to live a better quality of life when it comes to their family and carers, when it comes to employment and financially, they will have a better independence and rely less on the systems. So we believe that the role of the patients and the role of all the stakeholders is to work together towards an inclusive system so that we can correctly identify and address the unmet needs in a genuine public-private partnership that can foster innovation. And this could also lead to constructive dialogues between all the stakeholders involved in R&D. And while some best practices already exist, it is really necessary to learn from them and share them widely to mainstream a partnership approach in research. So those are kind of the key reflection points that I'm putting here on the table. And I would like to hear from you on specifically what are your thoughts, and from different background, different industry that you might be coming from. It would be nice to hear first your thoughts, and then towards specific questions that I was addressing. Do you think that we should align on the concept of unmet needs at EU level? And as it is foreseen in the EU pharmaceutical strategy, what do you think about defining a common definition or a common set of criteria about these unmet needs? And also how to ensure patients and public involvement in this process. So I'm going to give the floor to the participants now and see if you have any comments. Please raise your hand there and we can unmute you, or you can also unmute yourself, I think. So I will check if there are also notes in the chat.
Elizabeth, when you're not speaking, can you mute yourself? We think the voice comes from you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's when you are not speaking, we hear the noise. Thank you.
I can't see any raised hands or any comments in the chat.
Not yet.
So just to maybe trigger a bit of a discussion, one of the food for thought here from different stakeholders also, it's what would you value as a partnership, and where do you think that there are gaps that we need to kind of address when we are talking about these unmet needs? Is there anyone that would like to share your perspective from your own industry? seems to be a very quiet workshop. I don't know if there is a problem, technical problem, or is that no one is really intervening. As we are not many people, maybe we can ask also for people to introduce themselves. Maybe that's the question that is wrong. Maybe I will go to the next question that we have is what barriers exist in trying to assess those patients' needs or those unmet needs in terms of the medicines and medical device research. Do you have also any solution, any suggestion on how we can identify those barriers and find solutions? Is there any questions coming in the chat that I don't see? Okay, so while we're waiting for anyone to intervene, I think what I'd like to also maybe investigate a little bit more is the patient perspective in terms of how do we include the patient's perspective in R&D in terms of identifying the needs and priorities, and how to make sure that those different strategies are combined. Coming back to one of the key notes that was addressed this morning by the Commissioner, she reminded us the importance of not leaving anyone behind. And in this current situation with the COVID crisis and so on, this has been something that everyone has been looking for. And in terms of crisis, it has been a moment where everyone has been focusing on reaching out to the people that were affected, but at the same time, in parallel, there were chronic patients that were on the bench waiting to be taken care of. And it's important to, when we are building the future and looking at those unmet medical needs, to make sure that we take into account all the patients, and that the chronic patients are also constantly included in the consultation and not overwrite when there is a crisis. So I'd like also to ask you in this workshop if you have any comments on this, and how do you see that we could invest in research in the priority areas without making unethical choices. I'm gonna pause a second to see if there are anyone coming up with a comment.
There is one comment from União.
Where I can't see the comment. Can you please?
In retrospect, a multi-site also. high-level forum for better access to health innovation, as proposed by the European Health Coalition, could help to develop concrete solutions for the introduction of new technology into healthcare systems.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. I think that's a very good point. Actually, those broader coalitions that are helping in terms of building up private partnership and multi-stakeholder partnership could really bring a new light on the discussions and the dialogue. So that would be a very good a way of combining providing a forum for discussion in this topic. So my answer would be yes, but this is something that once again, when we are in a multi-stakeholder forum, we need to start with the definition and the definition of the concept and what would be the criteria to be taken into account. So here, if you have any thoughts on this, that would be really helpful for us to hear and to help with the discussion.
And in fact, the new technology they may not be economically viable.
Can you repeat your question? Sorry, or your remark?
Around the champion, could Emma still come up with scientific advice?
So the question was, could Emma come up with some viable solution, right?
Yes, I can repeat the question. It's in the chat, but I can repeat it. So, as a multi-stakeholder, what's your perception, your perspective, sorry, of a high-level forum for better access to health innovation, as proposed by the European Health Coalition, if this could help to develop solutions for the introduction of new technologies into healthcare system? So, a kind of high-level forum
Acha que estão a ver bem?
for better access.
Thank you. Yes, so so for better access, the solution, it could be an option to be discussed, and I think that's a good point. I'm not sure I understood perfectly the first bit of the intervention on the question, but from what I understood here is to see what would be what would be the best way forward, I guess, in combining that effort. I also see that there is actually another question that is coming up. What will be done to better implement this understanding in IHI and to ensure that the IHI addresses unmet medical health needs in line with the WHO's understanding and the SDGs? I would like to maybe, I don't know who's asked the question, is Pia. Would you like to maybe come in on this comment and clarify a little bit what you meant by this?
Elizabeth, the people who are asking these cannot intervene, just through the chat, but hopefully she clarifies it better on the chat. I will check.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Yeah, it would be good if we can have a little bit of clarification. So if you have already any thoughts about how you would see that implemented in the IHI, and also I would bring this question to the rest of the audience. If you also have any thoughts about this, that would be helpful to bring other also perspective. If there is no other clarification here, I think that's and again, because I'm answering from a patient's perspective. And from the EPF perspective, what we are looking at when we are looking at this is how we can bring benefit risk balance assessment in the discussion, in the dialogue as a criteria of the unmet needs. So really to have concrete discussion and putting in place consultation processes that goes directly from a meaningful patient consultation towards a policy or process that could be transferred into the IHI. And in terms of getting in line with the WHO's understanding, again, we are coming back to the SDGs. We are coming back to this lack of definition, of concrete definition of what do we mean by this concept. So clarify, the first step would be to have a clarification on the concept, clarification that would bring then to a further understanding of how we can establish a process that would bring on board a different perspective and make sure that we take into account not only the risk benefits, but also that we bring on board the real world data evidences that could also help to understand better what are the key priorities, not from a specific category perspective, but from a perspective that is multi-stakeholder, but also patient-centered. But I'm sure, like in this discussion, there are other stakeholders that are there, and it would be great to have not only the patient perspective, but any other patients, other categories of representatives that could share the ideas. There is a question in the chat from Victoria. So can we go deeper into the intervention of patients in the new legislation, in the new HTA regulation and definition of priorities? So in terms of getting into sorry, there is someone who unmuted their mic. You wanted to intervene? No. So yes, so in terms of getting into deeper into the intervention of the patients, so there I think we could find ways to have a deeper understanding of what is the intervention of the patients in the different processes that are established with the new HTA regulations. We know that there has been an improvement in the role of the patients and the way they are consulted or they are intervening. There are more trainings provided in this are available in this forum, and we need to make sure that we find ways to keep pushing for this meaningful intervention from the patient stage. In terms of definition of priorities, it's also again, we're coming back to this notion of understanding what are the needs and being able to define from those consultations what are the priorities. And there are two ways of doing that. One is to collect real world evidence data that can be provided there in terms of to the right stakeholders, but also there are other ways that would be to bring the discussion, the consultation process closer to the patient. What do we mean by patient? There are the pool of patient experts, but we need to think about how to broaden the scope of the consultation. And again, that comes to one of the questions we had here in terms of the patient and public involvement in the processes, how to ensure that. And I would be, again, very much interested to hear if anyone has any comment in terms of how would you see a better, meaningful patient involvement in the definition of the priorities. You can raise your hand, I think, if you want to speak up.
When I ask the people that are in the Zoom, they can intervene directly, participate in discussions. So, like Elizabeth is saying, if you want to speak up, just do it, or raise your hand. So the people who we are seeing in the screen, they can intervene. Elizabeth, you are muted now. There is another question
in the chat. Sorry.
We have seen IHI went to address unmet needs. How will the EU define those, as IHI does not give a precise definition? And how will WHO show list of unmet health needs that support the achievement?
Thank you for reading the question. So here the aim, the objective is set, right? We are talking about addressing the unmet health needs has been set as a clear objective there. And how will the EU define those? That is something that we don't have yet the answer to. And I think that's something that we have to bring back on the agenda of the EU, and making sure that we can support in terms of defining the concept, and to make sure that this definition doesn't restrict the prioritization of those unmet needs. So it's to think how we can do that, and the proposal that was done before earlier in that we could work with the coalition, the health coalition, could be an option to consider, and that we shouldn't be excluding, is really to establish a multi-stakeholder position and definition of the concept that we could all work together on. And so it would be good to have a consultation and then bring that back to the institution and within these different processes, so we can really have a multi-stakeholder approach when we're addressing this topic. Regarding the World Health Organization, it's the same. So how can we define success, actually, when we are looking at this, if we don't have a clear definition of the needs? It's something that we need also to think about when thinking about evidence, data requirements for the new therapies. And would you I think that's a question again for the audience, but I understand that the input are limited. So, but something to reflect on. Maybe it's really, besides the definition of the needs, also how can we make sure that when we are addressing the patient unmet needs, we bring on the table the right elements. So the right, as I was saying, like, the right data to define those priorities. So that's something that would require some consultation, and you are all welcome to contribute if you have any thoughts on how we can do that, and what would be your thoughts on this. Do you think that we should work together towards that? I see there is a national perspective that was mentioned here in the chat. In national authorities' views, preserving the incentives contained in the orphan regulation would be central to the EU strategy to promote innovation that meets the needs of patients. And that's a question. So it's not a remark, it's a question. So I suppose that the question is if if we could use those incentives to make sure that it promotes innovations. And that's a good way of proceeding to make sure that we encourage, incentives that would be safeguarding those processes and ensuring that the patient's needs are in line with the concrete aspects. I'm not sure if this is a suggestion from the person, but I would suppose so. But I think that creating national incentives could be a good option to indeed have a proper monitoring of those of that implementation. Is there any other thoughts? Yes. So that someone is saying here, Pia Podier, that there is an important limitation of the current IHI proposal, which is the key focus on vaguely defined strategic unmet public health needs in particular, and those currently insufficiently served by industry. The proposal says that an unmet public health need shall be defined as a need. I think I'm missing part of the...
It was great. So,
okay. Okay, I see. A need currently not addressed. However, the proposal does not provide any criteria to assess these reasons. Also, in current governance model of the partnership, it's the industry that will participate in deciding on what should be addressed. Tedros Ghebreyesus mentioned the need to work on the priority list. Sorry, I'm just processing what was written here. And again, we get back to this lack of definition, that there are there is a proposal in terms of partnership, but that partnership seems to be very limiting to in terms of defining who would be contributing and what should be addressed. So that's probably a suggestion to open up the discussion and to see also how to bring on board a different perspective. And to make sure that the governance models per se are adapted to what we want to achieve, and there is a lack of there is a bit of work to be done in this bit to make sure that we can advance on the topic. Please feel free to comment if you think that I'm not interpreting correctly what you're saying. So there is a question from Anya Schill. Do you think that the concept of UMN has helped to drive innovation and development, or has it most been used to justify lower evidence standards for decision making? The concept of UMN has helped to drive innovation. That's an interesting question, actually. So I guess that's, I don't know if anyone else has some thoughts, and I would be curious to hear actually on this. But I don't, from our perspective, from the patient's perspective, I don't think that this has been that has really lowered the standards for decision making. I think that we are still in a very new initial stage at defining this and trying to move on, and it's important that we keep working on this. Because we really believe that, you know, to be able to meet concretely the patient's need, you need to understand better where are the gaps, and it will give more focused decisions, more focused innovation, and be able to meet the gaps where they are concretely. So maybe it has been slower. It has probably slowed down a little bit the things, but it's because there is a lack of definition, and there is still work to be done on this. So I don't think that I really do believe that it will not only drive innovation, but it will drive meaningful and efficient innovation. And I hope you agree with me, but I think that's very important to remind that the whole concept of having of defining those needs and being able to bring evidence and to work towards that is crucial and fundamental for the patients to be able to improve their quality of life at the end of the day. We are getting closer to the time, so I will just try to wrap up the discussion that we had. There has been a few comments, and what we see in the discussion. So, also answering the question that we put forward, is that there's still a need to identify better what we are talking about when we are talking about the unmet medical needs, to bring more specific governance model that will support the process, and to explain better in the different strategies that exist at different level. We were talking about the IHI, the WHO's guidelines, and really try to coordinate better what we are talking about in those different strategies, so we can move towards one direction, and also that would help to see where we are in terms of assessing if we are actually on the right track. And this is the last question that we addressed, was quite interesting in that bit, to see does it help, or actually does it slow down innovation? Can we know if how much time remains? If we can, if there are any more remarks that can be taken?
It's 5 minutes, but I don't have any more comments from the chat. Maybe people can forward any last questions to Elizabeth.
If there are any more questions, I'm happy to take them. It's I have to say it's a bit of a weird experience to moderate a workshop where I can't see anyone. So I hope I answer your question, and please don't hesitate to contact us again and or to put in the chat if you think my wrap up needs more attention.
I think your topic has been quite what was posted in the chat and the questions raised, Elizabeth. That's my opinion from here.
Thank you. Well, if we don't have any more questions, well, you can maybe take a couple of minutes more break before we get into the main room. But yeah, that's an interesting experience. I see there is one unmuted mic. I'm not sure if that's... No.
I'm going to check again if there is any. Yeah, there is. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you to you, all of you who attended the session.
So please give me a sign from the technicians when all participants are back in the main room. So thank you very much. I heard from the technicians that everybody is back in the main room, so we will go forward with the results of the breakout sessions, and we will start with breakout session 1. And I would ask Helena and Violeta to wrap up what you have discussed and what are the key outcomes of your session. So please go ahead. Helena or Violeta, are you able to unmute? And
Now I can.
okay, great.
Now I'm unmuted.
Hi, Violeta.
Hello, Carol.
So please go ahead with your wrap up.
So, as you know, the topic of our session was how can we improve access to medicines in special populations, and what changes in the 2 regulations could potentially lead to an improvement in access. And we had very short presentations of the 4 different scenarios which are discussed and which are now being tested, both for the pediatric and for the orphan regulation. And there are some differences. What are the elements which are in these scenarios? And then the question to the audience was, what suggestions do you have in mind which can help in this perspective? Now, one of the problems, especially for the pediatric regulation, is that our colleagues at the pediatric committee very often have to give a waiver for a certain medicine which is developed in adults, and the waiver is given because the condition does not exist in children. But on the other hand, the mechanism of action of this drug is such that it can be used and applicable for other diseases in children. And the question is, how can something be changed in the regulation to, let's say, push a little bit in the direction of development of that drug in other conditions? It is an advice as it is now, and this is always mentioned in the minutes of PDCO, but there is a wish to incentivize this in a different way, which will lead in the end to drug development in some neglected areas. So this is one question to the audience, and there were some different suggestions coming. One would be what I read in the chat. I have to look at my notes now, is that there could be some additional incentives, or that there could be suppression of Article 11b, if I noted it correctly. But also that a suggestion which came, and which is maybe valid also for the rare conditions, not only for the pediatric, was that there might be some prioritization and tolerance to which is inherent with the clinical uncertainty which we have with ultra rare conditions and with very few children having a certain disease. In other words, that there could be a different way to incentivize this. Now, another discussion which we had, and which was again a question to the audience, more related to the orphan regulation, that was whether there are mechanisms which we could think of related to differential incentivization of drug development according to the level of the unmet medical need, and also to the performance during drug development, but also post-marketing of the certain medicinal product. What is meant here is that there could be ideas how to provide additional rewards and incentives if a medicinal product is not only developed and brought to the market, but is also in the end made available and accessible in more or all countries of the European Union, which is a problem very well recognized nowadays. So whether there could be some mechanisms how to correlate the extent of market exclusivity or any other incentives which are now under discussion, some new, probably different incentives, to the efforts which have been made, and to the final result, which is the availability and access to medicines. Then I also saw something in the chat, which I'm not sure whether it was in reference to our session, but I think it was, and it is related to the fact that maybe HTAs are having a very complex assessment nowadays, could be a little bit simplified when it is about some neglected patient populations. And then for the ultra rare conditions, there was a comment that maybe there could be some additional schemes like similar to the PRIME, which can help and accelerate development. So maybe all this has been mentioned in many other conferences and meetings, but it was another opportunity to discuss some of these elements today. And I must say that if we had more time, I believe we would have had many more and interesting ideas, but unfortunately, we had a very limited amount of time. So this is a very small summary of what we discussed in session 1. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Violeta. I think I couldn't agree more that under the bottom line, so there are many ideas in the different breakout sessions, and I think for every panel it might be a starting point to follow up on these discussions. So in the interest of time, I see that we have only 15 minutes left. I would move on to breakout session 2, and I would ask Elizabeth to share then the results of the group, and with particular with your experience.
Thank you very much, Carol. So just to wrap up what we discussed, the breakout session 2 was around the unmet medical needs and medicines and medical devices research in view of patients and health system needs. So in this discussion, we were very much focusing on the definition of what we are meaning by the unmet medical needs. We see that there is this concept, this notion has been repeated, that has been set as an objective in many strategies, different strategies, to address the unmet medical needs, but there is a lack of really definition and understanding of the concept. So as a first step moving forward, it would be good to have a more concrete definition on what we mean by this, and what in different strategies maybe it would be a different definition. So to be able to understand better what we mean would be helpful. We also need to keep pushing for meaningful patient engagement in the definition of those priorities and those needs, as the key is really to be able to, at the end of the day, meet the needs of the patients and provide address the the needs that are identified and the priorities that are identified. And this could be done through a multi-stakeholder forum or public-private partnership. There was some suggestion here to look at the existing coalitions that exist and see if through those forums there would be a possibility to define better this concept. The different strategy that were mentioned were the IHI, HTA, the WHO, and the European, the Commission's definition. So it's really to bring all this together and see and understand if the definition is the same, so that we can also see how to implement that and how to address those. In terms of the multi-stakeholder forum, so it's also a better way to address better access to health innovation by developing concrete solution in a multi-stakeholder forum that would also help introduce new technologies into the healthcare systems. It was also mentioned that creating safeguards like incentives and also having a better governance models would allow equal partnership in the discussion and to define the strategies and to move forward. And that could be done both at European and national level. And there was a last question at the end that really was a strong question, asking if the concept of the unmet medical needs has helped to drive innovation or on the contrary has been used to justify lower evidence standards for the decision making. I believe that the concept of unmet medical needs is really important. It will help to make focused decisions and to make decisions that are and to drive innovation that would be meaningful and address concretely the needs to improve the quality of life of the patients. So this is what we need, but there is still ways to go, steps to move forward together to improve that understanding of what we are meaning.
Yeah, thanks Elizabeth for this concise review of your discussions, and I think it's exactly hit to the point that the definition is key and the governance in which circumstances we are moving. So César, repurposing of old medicines, this has been your group's topic. Please refer back to us.
Okay, sorry, I was mute and I couldn't do it. Thank you, Carl. I will be very brief. I think that in the discussion, it was very clear that definitely repurposing is an issue, and it's an issue that has at least two different angles to be seen. One is the things that usually do the pharmaceutical industry with the products that are still on patent or during the protection period, but that we have a niche of products that are all products out of patent, out of protection periods that can be seen as true orphans, as they are regularly used sometimes to treat a specific disease and patients, and sometimes because they may prove utility for a given disease, but that the industry do not have the incentives to develop. So there was a kind of consensus that we need to work on this segment of products that are all out of protection periods and that are not under a system of incentives that make that others, that the academia or the HTA or not-for-profit organizations can work on them. But in the end, and this is for for these products specifically, we need to see how these products end in the marketing of authorization holders, because I think that everyone's agreed that the academia and the not-for-profit organizations are not willing to convert themselves in marketing authorization holders. So in the end, we need to find this regulatory route to make it possible, to make possible that we change, provided we have enough data to grant the new indication, but that we find the way to do it within the regulatory system. Also, there was consensus, or at least some interventions in the same direction, that saying that not only can be done in the regulatory system, that we can find this regulatory route, that we can speed up the process, that even we can find incentives like fee exemption for these products, but that in the end that there are other things in the pharmaceutical system, substitution policies, price and reimbursement policies, that in the end may have also a role in making it possible and making it affordable and workable. We have learned during this COVID-19 pandemic, and dexamethasone has been mentioned several times. And a couple of final comments. We need to find the flexibilities on the system that allow us to find the way to the repurposing without lowering the bars. So we want to maintain the same guarantees that we usually give to the patients and the healthcare professional, but without making it impossible. And also, and somehow related, we have been discussing, and probably this will be commented also by Nikolai and the other colleagues, that how this non-usual data sets coming from registries, real world data, observational studies, and so on, can make a big contribution to this repurposing pathway. Or on the other hand, it will be very difficult to use this data because they will not reach the regulatory acceptances that we need to give the guarantees that we usually need. But overall, I think that a very interesting issue that is going to play at least a role in the upcoming pharmaceutical strategy in Europe. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Cesar, for this fine summary, particularly including the experience in the COVID-19 situation as well, regarding the corticosteroids or ibuprofen versus paracetamol and so on. So coming to the last breakout session, now it's Xavier and Nikolai on the use of big data and a European health data space. How could it be? So please, Xavier.
Yeah, I can start, and then Nicola can complete. We addressed the question of availability and accessibility of the data from recommendation from the Joint Task Force on Big Data, and which provide as a first recommendation to ensure a secure and ethical data sharing culture. And it also promote the data discoverability. So we discussed a number of topics around these themes. And the first one that was probably the most discussed was to whom and by whom should data be shared. We shared a number of experience from regulators and from also academia, but the experience from BfArM was mentioned that there would be a research data center to be established where the data will be made available to academia, public institutions, and but not to pharmaceutical companies or the public in large. So although we recognize that ideally the data should be made publicly available. Then this is difficult in practice, and the data may need to be shared at least between regulators, but also then with researchers. The question was also by whom should the data be made available, and we discussed the data that are being available with regulators, but also with companies. And what we said that it would be better to have a two-way streams of data sharing, that all the regulators could share data with companies and with others, but the industry is also sitting on a very large amount of data that are extremely valuable for the evaluation of benefits of and risk of medicines. But there are some obstacles for sharing this data from companies. But also we mentioned that at the level of academic institutions, there is also some culture of competition that may prevent sharing data or sharing data from research. We discussed also, because there was a question about what would be the action necessary at the EU level to promote the sharing of data across EU borders. And actually we came a bit to the conclusion that this is a question that may not be really appropriate anymore, because actually there is now in the US, but also in Europe, the system of federated network of database that is being developed and increasingly used, which says that it is possible now with technological advances to have access to the data remotely, to make remote queries on databases, and to then export the results of this query. So there is no need to move the data anymore in order to get access to information that is provided. We discussed also the difficulty to have data, and especially data from healthcare, routine healthcare, to have this data in real time. And in some countries, it may take months or even a year before the data that are collected in the electronic healthcare system can be made available for research or for regulators. So this is a difficulty that is certainly an important challenge in the future. We started a discussion, but we did not finish. We did not have the time to finish on data stewardship. So this is this system, this procedure that's being now promoted to ensure adequate and relevant expertise for data sharing, data ethics, and data protection within studies, and in order allowing them to follow the FAIR principles. So this is certainly an interesting ideas, and that we will need to follow, and that could provide them confidence and trust into the data that are being generated by industry or by regulators or by researchers. So I don't know, Nicola, if you would like to comment on this.
No, I think you covered it extremely well, Xavier, so thank you very much for that. I think we're also right on the dot out of time now. So I think you have covered everything. It was a lively discussion, a very good session. So back to you, Carl.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you pointed it out. We are out of time now. So it is now left to me to thank the presenters with the starting review and then in the breakout sessions. I thank the rapporteurs, and I can agree to Nicola, it has been a lively chat I have seen, and within the breakouts, so it's a starting point. And with that, I would like to thank Rui and his team and colleagues. As you see, you have hit the point here. You have chosen the right topics for the breakout sessions. There has been a big interest in these topics. So thanks a lot for allowing us this. And it was, I was happy to be a part of it, and it's been a great pleasure for me and all the participants. So many thanks to all of you, and wish you a good day in continuation. And now left for the short break before the panel 2 then is continued and with Maria from the Spanish agency. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye.